Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. Sorry about yesterday. Feeling a smidge under the weather. More of a tummy issue than anything. So definitely not sick, but just had a little bit of upset stomach, so I had to delay everything so I could feel a little bit better. And as of today, excuse me, a little bit of something right there. I had to go ahead and get started. So today is a test review day. Today we are going over what to see next week. On Tuesday, you will have a test. It needs to be completed on Tuesday at some point. That's kind of the goal. I know everything we've done so far this year usually is due by Sunday, but for a test, it's gonna have to be a situation where it has to be. Oh, I guess I could extend it the date, but either way, you're gonna have a 1 hour time limit to complete the test, and it will probably take you 30 to 45 minutes. So, to answer some of the questions I'm seeing in the chat real quick, Zoe, there was not a live stream yesterday. I did not go live. Was not feeling super well, so I was not up to getting on there and doing everything live. I was trying to get some scenery done. If you guys look in focus, more grades have been put in, and right now it's, I mean, if you are not submitting assignments, it's killing you. It's straight zeros right now. So, like, I think in one of my classes, the class average is a 54 because half the people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and the other half aren't. And if you're not submitting assignments, you're not completing assignments, there it goes. Sixth period is the only one that is not up to date yet. I got all the way through fifth period and I finished seventh period because they're really small. They only have like 12 people. So, sixth period will be done as soon as this goes off. It should only take a few minutes right after I'm done here. So, I've noticed I've got a couple people emailing me this morning about their passwords and everything. It has been a struggle, so I don't know why they made us keep changing you guys' passwords every 10 minutes. Now I think they've relegated the fact that they're going to stop making you guys do that so much while we're all away because it's been a challenge. So let's focus on today's goal. Today we are talking about, hold on, my camera's all messed up. Apparently I got a little too angry at Call of Duty last night. All right, so today we're going to be focusing on preparing for your test that is coming up on Tuesday next week. This is an opportunity for you guys to ask as many questions as you guys can. What kind of test it's going to be, what kind of things are going to be on there. I will actually tell you this now, and this might come as a surprise to many of you. There will be, no written section on this test. There will not be a single written section on this test in its current form. No, everything is going to be something you will be able to answer in a multiple choice, true, false, or matching capacity. So, for whatever reason, I feel like as soon as the 20-second, 30-second delay, whatever it is, hits, I'm going to hear a large amount of cheering. But yes, there will not be a written portion on this test. It will be all multiple choice, true, false, short answer. There should be a proof. Absolutely not. Okay? What I will tell you though is one of the advantages of not doing short answer means I can cover more ground in terms of a test. There's a lot more questions I can add to this test. There's going to be probably anywhere between 35 and 40 questions. That means multiple questions on the same subject. So it would not be a surprise for you to see 3 or 4 questions all solely based on the Texas annexation. Whereas on a regular test that I would have given you with a short answer part, I would have definitely I probably only put 1 or 2 questions on it, and there would most certainly be a short answer question as to explaining the process in which Texas would be absorbed. So for the sake of doing this first test, we're going to go ahead and pull away from short answers. There's also a second, more selfish reason why I'm doing this. It makes grading so much faster. That means Schoology will grade the test for me. So that makes my life a lot easier. Now, to clear the gigantic elephant aside from myself in the room, we need to go over a couple things. This test will have a time limit, however. So really just gauging on how long I would assume it would take each person to answer each question. Is there any assignments today, or is it just a study? Today's assignment really is to study, but tonight I will be putting up a extra credit. It would be an extra credit. I'm tired. Sorry, did not get much sleep last night, but we're working on it. It will be a study guide that is all 100% extra credit. So if you complete it, you will get a certain number of points. And I'm telling you right here, right now, some of us need it because they did not turn in things. Those of us who did not turn in the Industrial Revolution advertisement, you just shot yourself in the foot. That is a 30-point project grade that you got a 0 on. And I am willing to take some things late and to a certain extent, but it is rough. So make sure you guys are completing that and completing things on time. Aleve is right. You guys should be working on the Nat Turner questions. I only had so many people turn those in so far. It's very few, but remember those aren't due till Sunday. Sectionalism is fine. That is due by Saturday. That was a typo on my part. That it's kind of like bank error in your favor. So it should have been done last week, but since I put in it's due on Saturday this week, you guys have time. So you guys are fine. Those I haven't graded or put anything even into focus because there's a technical count. Is the study guide on Schoology yet? And when is it due? The study guide will be going into Schoology right after I'm done. Oh, not right after. It'll probably be on about 3:30 today because I have a conference call right after this with a bunch of the teachers. There was no PowerPoint for the instructions, which Golden Eagle, you need to be a little bit more specific on what do you mean for the instruction. For the Industrial Revolution, I'm confused. Okay, so I did the sectionalism summary a while ago. I mean, yeah, it's only a 2-paragraph summary. I figured you would have did it when I kind of assigned it because it's really not that hard. Just kind of goes over, and make sure you go back and watch the video on it. If you haven't, it'll help. The precedent project is going in. That's the next thing. For industrial advertisement, I believe I put it in, but let me check 6th period. I may have forgot to submit it into your guys' Schoology. If that happened, I'll go ahead and put it in there. It should be fine. Presidential precedence is going in. It takes a little bit longer to grade those because there's so many different variants of project. One, and then two, it's also in my third quarter folder, which is harder to get into now that we're in fourth quarter. It's just a pain. So those will be going in today probably. I'm confused if we had anything assigned yesterday. Nothing assigned yesterday. Nothing will count against you for being absent or whatever. What time will it be up at? Between 3 and 4 o'clock. The goal is it's depending on how long our meeting today is going to last on the conference call, and looking at today's minutes for what's supposed to be there, it might take time. So it might be a little bit. So I will try to work while doing the conference call. So my goal is to have that up for you as well. So the questions on the study guide are not necessarily the questions you'll see on the test. Well, of course, they're going to be. It's the same material that you'll see on the test, so it'll be phrased differently. It will require you more than likely to have to look things up. If hopefully, sorry, buddy, we all make mistakes. Hopefully, you guys will have to minimally look things up, but if you feel like you've extensively had to go and search things, then you'll be fine. Study guide would be due by Tuesday. Okay. My precedent project was long. A lot of them were, and it was very time consuming. What is on my screen? There we go. So, on that note, this is your opportunity, guys. Asking questions going away. We're going to kind of go through, and I'm going to kind of go through and explain what these two things were. I'm not going to do, can we still use our extra credit from the beginning of the year? Yes, you can, because I brought them home with me. So I have my little forms, old papers from way back when you guys donated Christmas lights and all that kind of stuff. So that would be a good time. You just need to reach out to me in an email. Also, speaking of email, this brings up a very important announcement that we're making. There's only one student in particular who I have worked with since the beginning of the year on this particular issue. But everybody else, you are now on notice. All assignments must be submitted in Schoology. I will no longer accept you guys sending me email. If you email me a project, you email me assignment, it's not going to count. Right? As of right now, if you have a missing in your grade book, it's because I don't have something on Schoology. And I know sometimes there's like 2 different slots. I look in every single spot. If I don't see it, it ain't there. And if it's not there, I'm not taking it. So you need to ensure that you go ahead and submit it in Schoology. By hook or by crook, whatever it takes, you put it into Schoology, because it's really difficult to dig through emails to find all of your guys' assignments when I'm going into grade. It is a nightmare scenario. So you have to understand, we're no longer at school, so things that teachers could run by my door and ask me a quick question now is an email. Every single thing I do is an email. So I've got tons of emails, and not only that, all your Schoology notifications drive me up a wall. I turn them off, but still, there's still a lot. So ensure that you're submitting everything in Schoology. So we're going to talk about Manifest Destiny first to get a kind of a basic understanding. So real quick, let me pull something up so that way when we get into here. Okay. The Jackson, Washington, and Jefferson that was the same one. Jefferson, Jackson, Washington project. Very good. So I got to pull something up real quick. But when we talk about Manifest Destiny, there's a couple things that we need to make sure we have down. Okay? First off, could you go ahead and type in the chat, what does Manifest Destiny mean? If you break those 2 words down, what does Manifest Destiny mean? What was the main ideological belief that Americans of the 18th century, or 19th century really, had in terms of expansion? So if you're going to go ahead and put that in the chat while I get myself a little bit ready here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put you on a please wait for just a minute while I get set up. Okay, and whoop, boop. All right, we're back. Sorry, took a little while. Hopefully, you don't jump out of your chair. I didn't lose anybody. That's shocking. All right, so anywho, as you can tell, Mr. Sullivan, I have to be honest with you, teaching from home isn't as easy as it seems. All the technology and all this stuff that I have to do takes a little bit of time and setup. And also sometimes when you're running multiple screens, multiple computers, it does take a little while for everything to process. And my computer is being taxed pretty heavily right now. We're at about 30% CPU usage. So, which is actually not all that bad, but still it can run a little bit of glitchy when it happens. So here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about Manifest Destiny real quick. I'm going to fly through this. I'm going to present you a couple of things, a couple of opportunities. Your study guide, like I said, will be available by 3 o'clock. It'll probably be up there a lot faster because I found it while looking for this thing. And at the same time, you will also be able to have a set of guided notes, which I can prepare for you as well to help you be prepared for said study guide. So hopefully we work this well. So as I saw, some of the people in the chat were saying a couple things. First and foremost, study guide is due by Tuesday next week, which is the day of the test. Okay? I can set an official due date for the study guide on like a Sunday by the end of the week, only because this is extra credit. You don't have to do the study guide. Study guide is not official. It is not a grade. There will not be a it will not be a grade in the grade book. So I will make it very clear and well known in the assignment submission box that this is simply a extra credit activity. It's something that you do not have to do. Now, to get a good grade on the test is something that you probably should do. So it's like voting. Not something mandatory, but something probably you should be responsible enough to do. Now, on that note, because it is not mandatory, like I said, I can make it due on any day I want. If it was something like a mandatory assignment, it has to be due on the Sunday of that week. So, that being said, let's move on. Let's talk about Manifest Destiny real quick. First and foremost, we know that millions of Americans in the 1840s and 1850s believed that God had chosen Americans to control the Western Hemisphere, this concept of sea to shining sea. So this idea that we should control everything in the continental United States from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So we should control all that territory from east to west. So, on that note, sorry. They felt it was our mission to spread democratic institutions from sea to shining sea, and that land greed and ideals joined to a potent mix for expansion. So people wanted to gain more and more territory. What was yesterday's attendance work? We didn't have one for yesterday. I am able to go ahead and give a blank, and everybody gets attendance for that day. The rules are kind of adjusting as we move on. Okay, keep up. Thank you. Now, that being said, Manifest Destiny, was a coined phrase in 1844 by John L. Sullivan, and his goal was the idea that it really began with as we talked about earlier, the Indian Removal Act, with removing Indians from the territory of Georgia with Jackson and Van Buren, moving these Indians from Georgia, moving them over and to modern day Oklahoma, so that way Eastern settlers and farmers could expand into Georgia territory and start increasing the size of their plantations and farm systems, thus expanding more territory for more Americans to use. On this note, in 1844, we found a new president, James K. Polk, who they called Young Hickory, as opposed to Old Hickory. So he kind of had a lot of the feelings of Andrew Jackson, just not quite as big of a personality. So why was he important? Well, he sought to bring Texas and Oregon into the territory, into the United States, and he sought to gain more and more territory and land, which in hindsight, he was very successful. He is the president who is known to have brought in more territory to the United States than any other president. And he did it in a very short amount of time. Now, at the time, Whigs supported Henry Clay, but like I said earlier, when we were talking sectionalism, we saw the Whig Party was slowly starting to die, it was starting to fail, and it was for the first time, we're going to skip down to the bottom, we see that Polk would defeat Clay 170 to 105. Clay lost New York by 5,000 votes, which would have been enough to at least make it interesting. Now, as president, he had an idea. He was going to lower tariffs, which you guys don't really need to worry about. He was going to restore an independent treasury system. So we're going to remove the national sticker off of banks and stuff and let the private sector run money as opposed to letting the government control it. His goal was also to bring in California and settle the dispute of Oregon with Great Britain. We're going to say that Oregon is ours and they can leave us alone. Okay? Ooh, fancy pants. Looks like a villain on The Office. Now, the Oregon Treaty was pretty simple. It was a dispute that we've had for decades with Great Britain as to what part of the territory do we own and what part do they own, which is funny because Britain didn't have all that much claim over the land, but they said they did. So eventually we would get into a conflict with Russia in 1812. In 1820, we created the Monroe Doctrine, this concept that we should be moving out further west and we should go out here. We would create treaties with the U.S. and Britain, which eventually would push Russia past that line way up north, and eventually they would settle in modern-day Alaska. But U.S. and Britain became sole possessors of this territory. Okay, it's like when three friends are arguing over a cookie, we push one of them away, so now it's only two of us with the cookie, except eventually this cookie isn't big enough for the both of us. Somebody's going to have to take this cookie. Okay? Now, in 1840s, we saw a flood of American pioneers that came to Oregon in a trail blazed by Jedediah Smith. Coolest name ever. Now, the goal is they wanted to take Oregon by using a simple math. If you have more Americans living in Oregon, then it's pretty much an American territory, right? So that was kind of the method they used with Texas, and it kind of worked out for them. But ultimately, an argument would form, and we're going to try to speed through this because I know we've been here. Eventually, the United States and Britain would come to a consensus and agreed at the 49th parallel. So we're using longitudinal, latitudinal parallel lines to help us understand where the boundary would be between Britain and America, and they decided on the 49th parallel. Granted, let's be fair, we would ultimately take all that territory anyway because that's modern-day Washington that Britain was in. So the next one was Texas that we talked about, and Texas was fairly simple, right? Texas was part of Mexico. Mexico required that all Mexican citizens be Catholic and that slavery was outlawed. And because that slavery was outlawed and these people had to become Catholics in order to live in Mexico, these Americans who moved into Texas were getting kind of frustrated because they didn't want to lose their, one, their heritage as Americans, and then two, they also didn't want to give up their slaves, and three, they didn't want to have to be forced into a religion that they didn't believe in. It kind of forced them into a position where they were going to fight back, and thus Texas would fight in a revolution. We saw that the Battle of Alamo happens here, the Battle of the Goliad, and those were two particularly punishing losses for Texans, whereas the Mexicans, under the power of the governor of Mexico, or the leader of Mexico at the time, as well as their military leader, Santa Anna, pretty much beat them down to the point of submission. However, with a couple of rallying battle cries, the Texans would actually pull off the victory at the Battle of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Actually, not the Guadalupe Hidalgo. Sorry, that's wrong. They would eventually win over control and become an independent country. So Texas becomes the Lone Star Republic. And the thought was, well, Texas will just quickly join and become a part of America. Well, not so quick. Okay? Because in 1845, President John Tyler won a joint resolution and eventually would get them into the United States after 9 years of waiting. Okay, so from 1836 to 1846, technically it's 9 years because it didn't get to the complete date, you would see that Texas would eventually be absorbed into the United States. Remember, when something is taken and absorbed into, it's called an annexation. Now, Southerners strongly supported annexation because you're bringing a very large slave state. Many opponents feared that it would expand slavery into a new region, and which that region is out west. And they don't want, and as we talked about this when we talked about, when we introduced the slavery topic and when we also talked about the Fugitive Slave Act, Northerners in particular did not like the concept of slavery. It was quickly becoming something that was less and less popular, and the idea of abolition started kicking in. Abolition simply means the ability to remove something, and that's particularly something they wanted to abolish was slavery. They wanted to get rid of it. So the best way to stop slavery is to start limiting where slavery can be had, and Texas was seen as a huge opportunity for pro-slavery movement. Okay? So Mexico claimed that the United States had unjustly taken Texas and refused to recognize its annexation. So if you recall, Mexico eventually would allow Texas to become independent, but with kind of a little caveat, a little A little side note. As long as you don't join the United States, we will recognize you as being independent. It's kind of like if someone broke up with their girlfriend and said, that's cool, we can break up, you just can't date anybody. Well, that doesn't work. That's not how breaking up works. That's kind of silly. But that's kind of how Mexico viewed it. It's like, all right, fine, you can go and be independent, you can go be your own country, but you better not join with the United States, because if you do, I'm going to have a real big problem with it. And what happens after 9 years? Texas becomes a part of the United States, and Mexico will not forget it, and they get very upset. Thus, a war would break out. Right? So Polk wanted to buy California from Mexico, but Mexico's already mad at us for taking Texas from them. The Texas issue had caused Mexico to sever all diplomatic relations with the United States. They're not returning our calls, and they won't return my text. They left you unread. It's not great. So what happens, though, is that their boundary dispute originally was that they felt that Texas would end at the Nueces River, which is not where the modern day border is. That's really far north. Okay, that's near like Oklahoma. Now, Texans claimed that the Rio Grande to the south was the boundary. And then, unfortunately, things would happen. Now, Polk honored Texas's boundaries and claimed $3 million in damages. So they're like, this should be our territory. So eventually, we sent a man by the name of John Slidell to Mexico City in late 1845 to go and buy California for $25 million. That's an important part of the story, and I'm talking really fast, but you'll be able to slow me down to like 50% to listen again, and you can go back and watch this over and over and over. But this is important. He offered them $25 million just for California. Just for California. Let's see how bad of a decision Mexico makes here is. Now, Mexico would refuse to allow Slidell to present his proposition, so they wouldn't even listen. Okay? So this, if you look, is the boundary. This is Texas at the time. Okay? Where's my mouse? It's doing that thing again, isn't it? There we go. All right. So, January 1846, Polk ordered General Zachary Taylor, important name, eventually becomes president, to march from the Nueces River down to the Rio Grande and ordered the Navy in Gulf of Mexico and California coast to be ready. Hey, we might get into a fight here, gang. Let's pay attention. Okay, now Polk was prepared to force a showdown, but none occurred. Thank goodness. Now, in April of 1846, Mexican troops crossed the Rio Grande and attacked Taylor, causing 16 people to be killed and wounded. That's not good. Okay, Polk sent a war message to Congress. We're going to be fighting Mexico. They kill people on American soil. Congress overwhelmingly voted for declaration of war, and the Southern expansionists eager to take more Mexican territory. They felt this was like a super win, right? Oh man, not only are we going to get Texas, but we're probably going to get a bunch more land that could eventually become more slave states. This is a fantastic news. Remember, because the Missouri Compromise tells us anything below that line would eventually become a slave state. Anything below the southern border of Missouri would become a slave state. Positive news for them. A majority of Whigs opposed the war in principle, right? Some Whigs questioned whether if the war had begun on U.S. territory. So they're kind of like, did this actually happen, or are they just using this as an excuse? Okay. And actually, what happens was Representative Abraham Lincoln, never heard of that guy, that's weird, sought the exact spot of where this happened so they could prove, should we go to war or should we not go to war? And many Whigs believed that the United States had no legal right to land south of the Nueces River, so they were siding with Mexico at the time. Okay, now, eventually, all this going on with Mexico, California was actually trying to become independent in and of itself. Captain John C. Fairmont captured California from everywhere else. Okay? At this point, after the state had earlier won its independence and was called the Bear Flag Revolt. That should sound familiar because if you've ever seen the flag of California, it has a bear on it. Okay? Now, in 1846, General Stephen W. Kearny captured Santa Fe and moved in to reinforce California. Look how handsome. Now, eventually, we're going to kind of skip a little bit down this because this is my AP exam, or my AP PowerPoint, so it's pretty long. Okay, so eventually, California would be taken. General Zachary Taylor was victorious at Monterey and Buena Vista, which would bring an end to the war. Now, Mexico would still refuse to negotiate. Instead, it would carry on a guerrilla war style fight. We all remember what guerrilla warfare is, where they kind of ambush and jump out and attack because they have significantly smaller numbers, and the Americans had larger numbers, so you try to separate and disorient as opposed to overwhelming force. So Mexico was really refusing to kind of keep going, but eventually they're going to be brought to their knees. with the Treaty of the Guadalupe Hidalgo, okay, in 1848, they come to an agreement. Okay, fine. So here's what happens. So here's what the Americans get. U.S. gains California and modern-day New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Nevada, and half of Mexican territory. So that's huge. So remember, we were going to pay them $25 million for California. We end up walking away with California, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, and half of Mexican territory. And then we only paid them $15 million and assumed claims of U.S. citizens against Mexico of $3,250,000. So we got money from them to pay back any outstanding claims Americans had against Mexico at the time. So we really paid a very small amount of money. Now, the treaty was approved 838 to 14, despite bitter debate, because remember, many of these Whig government officials did not want this to happen. Okay, now Mexican Whigs, if you will, disapproved of the war and even threatened to cut off supplies to the United States and forces in Mexico. Expansionists, people who want more slave territory in the South, clamored for all of Mexico. Hey, we already got them. We have them on their knees. Let's take everything they have. Okay. Calhoun pushed for a treaty immediately before significant opposition mounted. So, ultimately, what was the most significantly slavery issue reignited, as we talked about when we get to sectionalism. Slavery or not in the new territories. In a broad sense, the Mexican War resulted in civil war over time. Abolitionists saw Mexican War as a conspiracy of Southern slave owners, which we see the Wilmot Proviso. Slavery should never exist in any territory gained from Mexico. Twice passed the House, but not the Senate, and endorsed by all but one free state. Okay, Southerners resented Northern attempts to prevent expansion of slavery. So we could see how all of this stuff really kind of led into what we call sectionalism, this divide between the North and the South. I mean, the Mexican War ultimately led us to the Civil War. Now, U.S. territory increased by a third, including Texas, bigger than the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, 13,000 Americans dead, mostly by disease, as with many wars. Sentiment for Manifest Destiny had increased in the United States. We see tangible results, right? It's kind of like the psychological principle as to why whenever we have a crisis like a hurricane or a pandemic, clearly, why do people buy toilet paper? Weird thing. You're about to learn something you actually might want to know. Why do people buy toilet paper? It's very odd. It's a psychological it's a psychological paradigm that humans have. In particular, what happens is when they see stress or worry or fear, they panic and they want to feel like they are making accomplished goals, that they are achieving something to fix a problem or to show that they are prepared to meet a problem. We like to see piles of things. It looks like we have a large amount of supplies. People buy large amounts of bulk items of food. They go to Costco. And what looks like you're super prepared, large amounts of toilet paper. They're physically large, it takes up space, and it shows that you have done something to prepare. For whatever reason, human beings tend to gravitate toward toilet paper as an example of showing that they are prepared for things. It's a psychological perspective that human beings, for whatever reason, have. We hoard things that show that we are prepared. And in this case, how do we show that Manifest Destiny is being accomplished, or it's a worthwhile mentality to have? Well, very simple. Have we gained more land? Yes, we have. And we have a large chunk of land to take. So we should be fine. Okay? Now, Latin America began to negatively view the United States as the Colossus of the North. They feared that America was becoming what they fought to get away from, right? They're becoming this imperial power in the North that will come and take over your lands from you. So it started a lot of different... The Mexican War really created a lot of different... viewpoints of the United States and shows a lot of change within the United States. U.S. forces experienced in war would affect the scope of the Civil War, so that it really would. This was the first real war the United States took on with a non-European power. So it gave them ample time to train, prepare, and new technologies and things that we would see in the Civil War. So, as we get to the end of Manifest Destiny, we see that large chunks of territory were taken and claimed for a multitude of reasons. And as we saw, it kind of Manifest Destiny and sectionalism work together. You need both parts. Both parts are necessary ultimately to understand the whole. So when you have both parts, when you get both parts together, ultimately what's happening is this. You will see that without manifest destiny, sectionalism wouldn't have occurred, right? And we talked about that when we talked about sectionalism. If you need to go back over the PowerPoint from sectionalism, I probably have it ready to go. What is wrong with my mouse today? There we are. It's been acting up lately. It's probably because I get mad at Call of Duty and slam it on the ground. I'm on the wrong screen again. Here we go. So we're going to see if I have the sectionalism thing ready to go, because I probably do. Open. I'll say that. Let's try it. And big button. And then let's see if we can't do this. Whoop, whoop. I do. Look at that. So I want to get to where we were talking about compromises. Right now, as we said, the war ends in 1848, the Mexican-American War. Tons of new territories: California, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada. Half of all of Mexican territory eventually becomes ours, and we'd see later in 53 we would take the the Gadsden Purchase would eventually become a part of the United States as well, really to kind of complete the trend track. What we ultimately need to understand is this, though. How did sectionalism rise, and how did it get there? The Wilmot Proviso, which I'm going to go back to real quick, was pretty important, because what it ultimately did was it showed that there was a political divide, not based on political party, but based on region and location. Northern states would agree, would work together. Southern states would band together for pro-slavery movements. Northern states would approve to get rid of and abolish slavery. That was ultimately their main goal. So what would happen ultimately from this is that David Wilmot from Pennsylvania, would argue that no territory gained from the Mexican-American War should have any slaves in them. They should be slave-free. Why is that a big deal? Because it goes right in the face of the Compromise of 1820. What was the Compromise of 1820, you might add? Well, it was created by the great compromiser. His name, Henry Clay. Henry Clay solved a big problem. How do we determine what states should be slave states and which states should be free states? So they created the compromise in 1820. They created the line, and they'll line anything south of the Compromise of 1820 line, which is the southern half of Missouri, would be free, would be slave states. Anything brought into the north of them would be free states. So most of these territories out here, parts of California, Nevada, New Mexico, are all south of that line. So these states should be eligible to become slave states. So ultimately, a new compromise 30 years later would be needed, and they come up with the Compromise of 1850. And what the Compromise of 1850 ultimately did is has three big parts to it that we really need to focus on. And remember, the first being that they want to use popular sovereignty as a means to determine whether a state would become free or slave state. What does popular sovereignty mean? Something you probably will definitely need to know in the test. Popular sovereignty means that people have the right to choose. Okay, popular, you hear the word pop, like population, people. Sovereignty, the right to rule. So people have the right to rule. Put all the words together. Okay, however, it would also make California a free state right off the bat. All the other states would have to vote to determine. Okay, this is kind of a slam dunk for the North because New Mexico has kind of arid and dry and doesn't really have much farming there. So eventually it would become definitely it would become a free state through popular sovereignty. But it gave the South one huge thing, and this is something you definitely will be able to tell me. Boop, 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 boop. It would give them the Fugitive Slave Act. The Fugitive Slave Act was the prize that the South sought after, that they wanted so badly. So badly. And what it did was ultimately it said that any slave that escaped from the South to the North must be returned. Well, that seems pretty easy, but more importantly what it would do is it created financial and potential jail punishments for those who did not follow it. So that meant if you were someone who lived in the North and you were against slavery, and you thought slavery was terrible, repugnant, and awful, and a slave came to you and said, I need your help, can we stay somewhere? That's great. This is why it's a review. Now, that being said, if you go to somewhere and you try to escape from this, awesome. However, if you are found to have helped that person escape or not report it to the police, you could be arrested, you could be fined, and you can go to jail. So that created an issue. But it also made a financial incentive for judges to send these people back because they'd be paid for every slave that was returned. So it challenged them at a moral level as well as a political and a law level. So it was kind of a difficult thing for them to process and work on. Okay, so that's one thing we talked about. And as we said, we would see that the Whig Party would die during this time and the birth of the Republican Party would arise. Okay? Boop, boop, boop. All right, let me see. Where did we get to on this PowerPoint? Did we finish all this? Okay. So American politics experienced a significant change in what we call the antebellum. So when you hear me say the word antebellum, this is super important. Antebellum means everything before this, everything in the 1800s before the Civil War. So this is pre-Civil War, because the Civil War, as we're going to learn about, like much like in the Marvel universe, is a pretty huge deal, right? It's a significant deal because it fundamentally changed our entire political system. I mean, Americans killed each other. We saw nearly 2 million dead. It was a significant, monumental watershed moment in American history. However, the antebellum period was all of that buildup that would eventually lead us to where we get to. Whoop, the hands go this way. Build up and a build up and a build up. It's kind of like the roller coaster getting to the top. And eventually there had to be that tipping point. The Kansas, Nebraska, if you go back into your PowerPoint or look at that, the bloody Kansas and all that stuff, those are your tipping points. The Mexican-American War is one of those tipping points. It's this buildup of unsolved problems. Okay? So, having done this 2 PowerPoints really, really quickly, let's go back to the main screen. Having done these 2 PowerPoints very, very quickly, here's now your goal, your task. We have gone through all this stuff. Some of the stuff we went through together, we did in class. Some of the stuff we did not do together in class, we've done right here live over the internet. So my goal for you guys is this. You guys need to take this stuff and you need to ultimately study. And the study guide is fairly simple. It is it's I think a particularly easy one for you guys. I don't think you guys are going to really struggle very much at all. I got to pull it up again because I want to make sure you have it. It'll allow you to kind of get through. Boo, boo, boo. No. Sorry, I'm an old person and I forget how to pull up my bookmarks. There we go. I'm pulling it up now because I just found it. Printable copy of the notes, study guide with notes. There we go. Just as an example, what you would see. Ooh, sorry, itch. Let's pull it up on this big screen here for you guys. Google Chrome. Okay. Let's zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. So what kind of thing would the study guide be? Boom. It's a lot of fill in the blank. I know. But if you guys go through this, go through your PowerPoints, read through it again, I promise you, it's going to make you almost overly prepared. Yes, it's a very large PowerPoint. Okay? I promise it's a lot. But this will definitely make you super, super, super prepared. Okay? I promise. This is not going to be a hard test for you once you go through this. This study guide will be in Schoology as soon as I log off here because I can't pull up my Schoology stuff and do all that while I'm live. So we only have a few more minutes anyway. But making sure that you guys have all this access to all this stuff. I will even give you a paper copy of notes that you can utilize and prepare for. But like I'm telling you, this isn't fool's gold. Don't think of it like in this. Don't use it in the sense that, oh, I'll just have this open while I'm doing my test. This will make it easier. The questions are not based off of this. The information is, but not the questions. So you also have a time limit on the test. So you only have a certain amount of time to take it. So if you're sitting there looking up every single answer and trying to get it perfect, you're going to struggle to finish in time. So that's kind of the goal. It's a balance of, I'm giving you the wealth of information and stuff necessary to be successful and to do well. But at the same time, you only have a certain amount of time to take that test. So, on that note, let's move over to the chat. Chat, I would like to know, what questions do you guys have for me? What is everything clear to you? I mean, This is, I think, the hardest part of this distance learning, virtual teaching, doing all this stuff, is I miss the interaction with you guys. I mean, even the nonverbal cues, I can look at some of your faces and you're making the weird puppy, like I heard a sound coming from a distance look, and I can tell you guys don't understand something or you need something stated. And I know I end a lot of these streams on questions and no one ever asks a question, but I mean, remember, we're off tomorrow. What is the time limit? Has the time limit been decided yet? It is 1 hour. You will have 1 hour to complete the test. It will probably take that. So I see the same question coming in. Will the reading like a historian assignment be on the test? The Nat Turner one will not be on the test. Nat Turner will not be on this test. That's slavery. When does the high school form due? I would just turn it in as soon as possible. Hello, Saul. So I would just turn that high school form in as soon as possible. Yep, test is 1 hour long. How long is the time limit? Once again, 1 hour long. So can you please post Manifest Destiny PowerPoint? I will post that bigger and more improved one momentarily. In fact, here, while you guys are on the screen, I'll do it right now. So that way you guys have it. Courses. We'll start with second period and work our way. Did you get my other email? Nick, you go ahead and email me specifically what you're referring to, so we're not doing this over a live YouTube channel. Okay, Indian Removal Act, reading like a historian, will be on the test. Indian Removal Act will be on the test in some form. Yes. How many pages are on the test? It's not really pages because you guys are doing it's on Schoology. How many questions? It's going to be anywhere between 30 and 50. But keep in mind, matching takes up a lot of space. After the test, will we go right into the Civil War? We go into the build-up. It sounds crazy because all this seems like build-up to the Civil War, but we're going to the build-up, and then we go into the Civil War proper, and then we go into the battles. And the Civil War is is a particularly long unit, so the Civil War will get us through the end of the year. Okay. Yes. Indian Removal Act will be on the test. Okay. Let's see. Let's add a file. It is going to go into your orange folder, by the way, guys. The Manifest Destiny PowerPoint will be located in your orange folder. Now I got to find it. That's the issue. Downloads. I had to bring it to me. There we go. Open. Here we go. Add. And I'm going to make sure. So keep them coming. More and more questions. The more questions you ask, the more information you'll have to be prepared and ready to go. Okay. Let's see. Folder. Let's see. So where do you turn it in? The high school form. Go ahead and make sure you email it to your guidance counselor, either Miss Sherburne or Miss Parajon. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Kathy. Moderator. Okay. Let's make sure it goes in there. So like I said, guys, make sure you go to look for the Manifest Destiny PowerPoint. It is going to be in the orange folder in Schoology. The sectionalism folder, you'll find it in there. So make sure that's there. Boom, boom. Sectionalism. Let's see. You have to scan it and send it to your guidance counselor. Thank you, Hudson. Make sure we all stay on top of it. That way we're all helping each other. Well, what is happening here? Oh, that's because it's the wrong class. There it is. So there we go. I wonder if I've been putting these. No. Okay. We should be good. Copy. Good. So everybody should have access to it. Go ahead and put a thumbs up in the chat if you went into Schoology and found it. Is it too late to turn in the high school form? Nope, it is not too late. Just do it as soon as possible. That helps them get you guys prepared. Okay. What will the test be visible for the whole day? Yes, it will be visible from 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday. It will be visible from 12:01 on Tuesday till 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday. So you have all 24 hours to go in and start the test and take the test. I might even push it longer. I may even give you several days to take it, but you will only be allowed to take it once. So you can only take it once. If you mess up, and then you only get 1 hour. So you get once you click, you got 1 hour to finish. So it's whenever you get it ready. But Tuesdays when the test will be live and you guys will be able to go and take this. Okay. So just keep in mind, those of you who keep tuning in every day around 11:45 to watch these, you guys will have a significant advantage. I'm sure many of you are smart enough and capable enough to just go and read the PowerPoints all by yourselves, loathsomes, and figure it out on your own. But I will tell you that for those of us who have watched, tuned in, streamed, you don't even have to be one of the people who type in and say things, and that's okay if you're watching from a distance. That's fine. You don't need to do that. But you guys will be at an advantage because you will see some of the questions are phrased by me. They are written by me. So they are, I like to give subtle hints and gestures to things I may or may not have said. So watching these videos, tuning in live to watch these videos do really help. I know kids are watching them because, I mean, yeah, sure, I may only have like 25, maybe 30 at the most watching at a given time. But when I go back and look at how many kids have watched them, I mean, the earlier ones, I'm sure I had a bunch of high schoolers going in and looking at them when they realize that we're actually doing schoolwork. They no longer want to watch. But nowadays, I'm getting at least 100, 150 people watching every day. So whether it's watching them real time, which it's not 100 people we know, but watching them over the day, that's the important part. Also, let me know if you'd like me to continue posting the videos directly in the Schoology. It's a little tricky on our end, but I can do that if it makes it easier for you to find. But if you have subscribed to the channel, you guys know how to navigate YouTube particularly well, so I feel like it's just easier to leave it there, and you guys can go access it. But if you think it'd do more good, I know I put the day 2, day 4 video. I believe that's my sectionalism video is in Schoology. It's in your orange folder for you guys to just go to and click in and watch at any given time. Okay. I'm still I think you're in the middle of saying something. Yep, there it goes. She's fixing it. She's retracting it. Okay. So, on Monday, I'll let the chat decide. I'll let you guys decide. Go ahead and put a smiley face in the chat if you think we should do a online Kahoot game. My only worry is that I feel like should we study the earlier lives? Yeah, like I said, day 2 and day 4 are probably going to be the better ones to go back and watch. Ugh, yucky. Day 2 and day 4 are probably the best ones to watch. So if you're going to go back and look at any of the videos from the past, day 2 and day 4, those are the 2 videos that will help you probably the most by far. Okay, so day 2 and day 4. So that would have been Tuesday last week. No. Tuesday and Thursday. Those were the 2 days where I did the long form PowerPoints. But go ahead and put a smiley face if you'd like to do Kahoot in the Kahoot live over the interwebs. It would be a possibility. The only problem with Kahoot live is we'd have to make sure nobody cheats and does the whole bot situation. Once the bot situation, I'll just shut it down and just sign off and call it a day. So keep in mind. It's for those who really want to participate and do well and have fun. It says how we do it. Okay, so I see a bunch of smiley faces, so it looks like something that would be warranted, worth time. Quizzes. Maddie, you might want to be specific. What is quizzes? Okay. I'm not aware of this quizzes. So, definitely something I would be willing to do. Just tired. I just don't feel funny. I'm not feeling it. It's just kind of stuck sitting at home. It's just so lonely and depressing. I just sit here and wonder, what can I do to reach these kids? It's just not working like it does at work. I could be better. Maybe I should just be the boring teacher. It's like Quizlet, but better. Better, you say? I will definitely look into it. If I can figure it out, then I will do it. Quizlet Live would not be practical on an internet setting. That would be very difficult to do. So I will definitely think of that way. But I doubt it, Jamie. Come on, Jamie. Anywho. Are you going to make a Quizlet too? I believe I already have one that exists, but I will, if it's not up, I will go back and look. But definitely look under Donut King. Look up Donut King Manifest Destiny. You'll probably find it. Quizzes is a game like Kahoot, but you have the answers. You have to answer the questions at your pace, so you don't have to work about watching the host screen. That works a lot better. Okay, because of the whole delay thing. So we'll definitely have to try that. I will look into quizzes, and then we will do that. So at this point in the chat, gang, I will have a discussion board up for your activity today. It's fairly simple. Just discussing. It has to do with the Nat Turner assignment. So you guys will see that coming up in the next few minutes. Also, I'm just struggling with words this morning. Your study guide will be up in probably the next few minutes, actually. I think I have enough time before worry not work. Oh, do you have to worry about watching the host video? There you go. That makes sense. I think my brain just auto-corrected anyway. So I think when I get, I'll have enough time before my conference call starts to get that posted for you guys available. I'll make sure 6 periods grades are all posted as well. Make sure you guys study for this. You're going to need to. You've never taken a test this long from me before. So ultimately what I'm doing is, usually when I give you guys a test, you might have 20 multiple choice and matching questions and like 4 short answers. We're talking anywhere between 30 and 40 questions. It's a lot. And so while I've got 17 viewers, hello, look at me, famous. Well, I've got the 16 of you watching. Let me let you in a little secret. There will be answers to other questions within the other questions. You will be able to answer some of the questions on the test by looking at the questions looking at the other questions. Use that to your advantage. Succeed, victory, win. So on that last note, make sure you guys are studying. We will have a game for Monday to prepare for your test on Tuesday. You will have a discussion board going live in just a few minutes. You will also have the study guide going into Schoology in just a few minutes. If you have any questions, please reach out. If anybody feels like they need to have a conference, please go ahead and email me, and I will be free to do a conference with you guys a little bit later. I know some of your teachers do like 30 minutes. We'll do like a 30-minute conference like twice a week or whatever, but I just go as needed. But I haven't heard from many people that they feel like they need to have a conference. But if you feel you need to have a conference, please reach out. I can set up a conference at any given time. Except if it's after 6 o'clock, then it's dinner time, and then I'm not going to be disturbed. So hopefully, guys, you have a wonderful day. Be good, be safe, be well, bye-bye. If you like this class and other classes like, go ahead and click like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell for ping notifications, so that way you guys can know when it's coming on, and you don't have to go and find out from me through Remind. So have a wonderful day, guys. Hopefully you had a good time, and hopefully you are prepared for your test coming up. Laters.